I am proud and thankful to God for helping me create this video of a speech about me and people with and without autism, and by tons of research from articles, blogs, and encyclopedias around the world web, especially by Wikipedia. My name is Devon Hillary, and I am autistic. I was born and raised as a Jamaican Caribbean descendant around the Foxhurst area of Bronx, New York, North America, before being diagnosed with autism along with another different developmental disability, intellectual disability, at 2.5. What is Autism Awareness all about? First, along with all major April holiday celebrations such as Easter and Earth Day, April 2nd is known as International Autism Acceptance Day, also known as International Autism Awareness Day, World Autism Day, and World Autism Acceptance Day. And all of April is International Autism Acceptance Month, also known as International Autism Awareness Month, and World Autism Acceptance Month. International Autism Acceptance is a month-long observance focused on supporting people with autism spectrum disorders. Observance of the month often involves educational events centered on learning what it means to be autistic and about the difficulties and discrimination that autistic people face, especially me. Additionally, it focuses on sharing stories and presentations, celebrating events, providing opportunities, and all other things to increase understanding, awareness, and acceptance of people with autism, fostering worldwide support. From National Today, it shows the definition of World Autism Acceptance Day this way. World Autism Acceptance Day, also known as World Autism Day or World Autism Awareness Day, is seen annually on April 2nd. Adopted by the United Nations on December 18, 2007, the purpose of this day is to raise awareness and promote acceptance of people with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. It also presents an opportunity to tear down misconceptions and false notions about disability. Autism awareness is important because greater public awareness of autism can help not just individuals with autism, but also make lives easier for families and caregivers. Also, we enrich our society by accepting the wonderful differences that we all have. What is the history of World Autism Acceptance Day? From National Today, they explain the history of World Autism Acceptance. World Autism Acceptance Day was adopted by the United Nations on December 18, 2007. The holiday was proposed by the then Qatari United Nations representative Mosa bint Nasser Al Misnad and supported by all member states. This day aims to raise awareness about people living with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. However, there has been some contention as to the use of the words autism awareness, as several autism rights advocates have urged that the purpose of the day shouldn't be merely to raise awareness about autism, The Autistic Self-Advocacy Network prefers the term autism acceptance instead because it promotes overcoming prejudice against autistic people as excuse me, as opposed to merely publicizing autism. Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental and neurological disorder that progresses throughout a person's lifetime but develops in early childhood. It affects a person's interaction and communication with others as well as how they learn. ASD is a spectrum disorder because it may present itself with a wide range of symptoms, which vary from one individual to another. Symptoms of ASD have been divided into four categories: behavioral, developmental, cognitive, and psychological. However, transcending categories, common symptoms may include avoidance of eye contact, repetitive behaviors, anxiety, change in voice, learning disabilities, inappropriate social interaction, and sensitive to sound. The cause of ASD has not yet been found, though research suggests that genes and environmental factors may play a significant role. The color and symbolisms of autism. Autism's color and symbolisms are all vital in helping celebrate awareness of autism. The Place for Children with Autism, an autism blog, discusses the 5 autism symbols. The colors and symbols standing for people and me with autism are the rainbow spectrum, lighted up blue, the puzzle piece, the butterfly, the infinity symbol. Now let me mention the meanings of all these 5 terms and exactly how the autism blog defines them. The rainbow spectrum, most closely tied to the concept of the autism spectrum, a range of colors on the rainbow has often been used to visually stand for the range of autism symptoms and individuals with autism's abilities and challenges. This rainbow spectrum is often paired with the puzzle piece logo, the infinity symbol, or the ribbon. Lighted up blue. On World Autism Awareness Day, April 2nd, you may see blue being shown off to support autism awareness. The color blue's association with autism originated with the Autism Advocacy Association known as Autism Speaks. Their Lighted Up Blue campaign calls for people to wear blue to promote awareness, autism awareness. Blue is also the organization's primary color and is associated with a calm feeling and acceptance in an otherwise loud and busy world for people on the spectrum. The puzzle piece. The puzzle piece is also a common symbol used to stand for autism and was made famous by Autism Speaks. Its use has garnered both positive and negative attention as individuals on the spectrum today feel it is too close related to the idea of people with autism not fitting in to societal expectations and social circles. The puzzle piece is commonly paired with blue or a rainbow spectrum. The butterfly. A new symbol for autism, the butterfly has been a suggested replacement for the puzzle piece as it inspires thoughts of change and symbolizes the beauty of diversity and continued development. It could also be a symbol indicative of the beauty of a unique perspective and the importance of continued development. And finally, the infinity symbol. Another newer alternative, the infinity symbol inspires thoughts of inclusivity for people on the spectrum. It is commonly displayed with colors of the rainbow or a solid color. Though these symbols and others have represented autism through the years, individuals on the spectrum tend to adopt their way of standing for the way autism has affected their lives. The Autism Awareness Walk. Autism walks help to support the needs of people with autism and their families throughout their life's journey. Autism walks bring together people with autism and the parents, grandparents, siblings, friends, relatives, and providers in a network of friendship and support. Funds raised help fuel innovative research, advocacy, and critical programs and services. Together, we are creating a world where all people with autism can reach their full potential. Furthermore, autism walks help people with autism in other ways, such as the 5 reasons from Autism Speaks. 1. Understanding and acceptance. 2. Research breakthroughs. 3. Screening and intervention. 4. Transition to adulthood. And 5. Information and services. The deep reality of people with autism. Autism has been a common developmental disability in the world nowadays, and there has been scientific research about it. For example, from World Health Organization, it said that it is estimated that worldwide about 1 in 100 children has autism. This estimate stands for an average figure, and reported prevalence varies across studies. Some well-controlled studies have, however, report higher figures. Another example is from Scientific American, a research article entitled "The Real Reasons Autism Rates Are Up in the U.S.," written by author Jessica Wright, which mentions why autism is more common today. Wright said that, quote, "The prevalence of autism in the United States has risen steadily since researchers first began tracking it in 2000. The rise in the rate has sparked fears of an epidemic, but experts say the bulk of the increase stems from a growing awareness of autism and changes to the condition's diagnostic criteria." Furthermore, the World Population Review of 2022 says that in recent years, cases of autism have risen. For Centers for Disease Control announced in 2021 that the rate of autism in the U.S. during 2018 was 1 child in 44. This is a notable rise from rates given in Scientific American for 2016, 1 in 68, though other sources claim an even higher 1 in 54 by age 8. 2008, 1 in 88, and 2000, 1 in 150. Moreover, this trend of rising autism, which dates to the early 1990s, is a global occurrence not confined to the United States. Still more, Axios said that the largest numbers of young autistic children live in developing or low and middle income countries, including over 1 million children each in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, while the highest rates of childhood autism are seen in the Middle East, Central Asia, and North Africa. We live in countries and cities around the world surrounded by ambitious, hardworking, and fascinating people. Most of them are fast paced environments offering the best of the best to see and do. Their cultural aspirations make them most excited to live on Earth, but they can also be the loneliest and most challenging. Where power, beauty, talent, intellect, and monies are valued, those who cannot readily supply me and people with autism are overlooked. The exclusiveness in sorting what and who is on top and what our relationship is to them pushes attention away from marginalized people such as me. The exclusiveness in sorting what and who is on top and what our relationship is to them pushes attention away from me and people with autism being isolated. Lack of accessible transportation and affordable housing, unequal education, and unemployment are only some of the common issues people with autism face. We often go neglected and are left with no means of connecting with people in our community or making friends. Unfortunately, many of us have developed unwarranted fears of not having enough contact with people and of autism. While this may seem insignificant, it is a fundamental problem. Worse, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic attack has not only created unfamiliar problems, but has exposed and exacerbated problems that have long existed. Just as people with different developmental disabilities, people and I with autism are often decreased in social status, moved involuntarily and separated from others, excluded from commonplace socializing, denied personal agency over their lives, and exposed to abuse and neglect. Conditioned to these circumstances and suffering hurt from bad relationships, people and I with autism typically have a distrust toward new relationships. At the prospect of making a friend who is there with no obvious obligations, many peel back with reluctance. The meaning of autism. Autism is defined as a developmental disorder of variable severity that is characterized by difficulty in social interaction and communication and by restricted or repetitive patterns of thought and behavior. Therefore, people with autism go through social communication challenges and difficulties, even being either verbal or nonverbal. Additionally, autism deals with social and communication challenges, which can all incorporate difficulty. Children and adults with autism have difficulty with verbal and nonverbal communication. For example, they may not understand or appropriately use spoken language. Around a third of people with autism are nonverbal. Gestures, eye contact, facial expressions, tone of voice, and expressions are not meant to be taken literally. Other social challenges can include difficulty with recognizing emotions and intentions in others, recognizing one's own emotions, expressing emotions, seeking emotional comfort from others, feeling overwhelmed in social situations, taking turns in conversation, and gauging personal space, distance between people. Furthermore, People and I with autism also have restricted and repetitive behaviors which vary across the autism spectrum. Examples: repetitive body movements such as rocking, flapping, spinning, and running back and forth, repetitive motions with objects such as spinning wheels, shaking sticks, and flipping levers, starting, staring at lights or spinning objects, ritualistic behaviors, lining up objects and repeatedly touching objects in a set order, narrow or extreme interest in specific topics, and need for unvarying routine resistance to change, same daily schedule, meal menu, clothes, and route to school. Autism has more symptoms such as hyperactivity, meaning highly active, impulsivity, meaning acting without thinking, short attention span, aggression, causing self-injury, temper tantrums, unusual eating and sleeping habits, unusual mood or emotional reactions, lack of fear or more fear than expected, and usual reactions to the way things sound, smell, taste, look, or feel. Autism is also linked with high rates of certain physical and mental health conditions. According from Raising Children in Australia, one of the most common problems with autism is anxiety. Anxiety is common in autistic children, and 40 to 60% of autistic children have it. Social anxiety is one of the most common anxiety disorders. Social anxiety probably happens because autistic people often have a style of interacting that can make socializing difficult for them. People with autism also would tend to talk to themselves. Autism Speaks says that people affected by autism like to review conversations to themselves. This can include repeating lines from their favorite movies, TV shows, or YouTube channels. We call this scripting. It is a common repetitive behavior that can be a source of comfort when the person is anxious or excited. The Mill Creek Behavioral Health Company mentions the negatives of children and teens having autism. Autism negativity includes the following: social isolation, familiar discord, difficulty forming and supporting friendships, difficulties relating and empathizing with other people, may have trouble living independently while others can live and work on their own, and sleep problems. People and I with autism. To start things off about me and people with autism, there are things all non-autistic people need to know and be aware of us being on the autism spectrum. Here are examples concerning people and I with autism people need to know. It is from a Psych2Go article entitled 6 Things Autistic Spectrum People Want You to Know. First, it said that awareness of autism and Asperger's syndrome have dramatically increased in recent years, but so have misconceptions. With all that being said, here are 6 examples of things people and I on the autism spectrum, want you to know about us. Written by Psych2Go. 1. We are not all geniuses. Do you believe the media stereotype that autistic people are geniuses, like in Rain Man, possessing superhuman abilities of calculation, memory, or observation? We're flattered but this sets impossible expectations for many of us who don't have special mental abilities and struggle with everyday things like speaking, bathing, and making appointments. Raising us on a pedestal can deny the sympathy and support we need just to endure a regular life. Two, we are not all lost causes. On the other hand, do you think only of our limitations? Even well meaning experts can dismiss those on the spectrum as eternal special needs cases, making harmful judgments like he or she will never graduate, never find a partner, never get a job, or never get a driver's license. We appreciate sympathy as these goals can't be very challenging for us. However, calling them impossible can deny the encouragement and guidance we need to reach our full potential. Three, we are not the same. If you've met one person on the spectrum, you've only met one person on the spectrum. Individuals on the spectrum have just as much variety as those outside it, and it's not just a simple scale from high to low functioning. We all have different profiles of symptoms, strengths, and struggles. Issues like sensory overload, physical coordination, communication, and social cues can affect us in unique ways. Also, we are not just young white boys. We can be male or female from all cultural backgrounds and at all life stages, from children and teens to loving parents and grandparents. There is no such thing as the typical autistic person. Four, we are not a threat. Social conventions like eye contact, body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, and controversial norms don't come natural to us. We cautiously memorize rules and scripts to appear normal, just like you would memorize formulas for an exam. Research shows that our behavior seems unnatural to others, which triggers negative snap judgments and avoidance. A study by Knox College revealed what habits the general population wrongly believe or creepy and suggest harmful intentions. Standing too closely, making too little or too much eye contact, laughing or smiling at strange times, and discussing overly personal topics. These are common social mistakes by those on the spectrum, but they've got nothing to do with the actual markers of dangerous people who are usually charming and charismatic. We are 7 times more likely to meet law enforcement, and this often turns violent when they misinterpret our mannerisms and stress responses as suspicious or threatening. 5. We are not doing well as we appear. Does it sound exhausting to manually micromanage our behavior all the time? Forcing us to conform to your bizarre world is more than exhausting. It's devastating. When you see someone on the spectrum acting normally or less autistic, what you're not seeing is the constant stress, hours of preparation beforehand, hours of burnout afterwards, endless overanalysis, years of trauma and development of major psychiatric and health problems. Our average lifespan is only 36 years, and our suicide rates are 9 times higher than the general population for adults and 28 times higher for children. Those of us considered high functioning or mild aren't necessarily struggling less. We are simply better at faking it. Lastly, 6, we are not a punchline. Have you ever heard the term autistic used as an insult or joke? Even with innocent intentions, this contributes to a stigma that makes it harder to be taken seriously and reach out for help. Seemingly unrelated stereotypes like the creep, the loner, the nerd, and the neckbeard can also be harmful. They don't intentionally refer to autistic people, but many of our traits overlap. So it's easy for us to fall into these prejudices. We are already trying so hard to make you comfortable, socialize properly, keep our special interests within limits, and keep regular hygiene. In fact, we're probably putting in more effort than you. These can be quite challenging for us, and dismissing us with a negative label does nothing to help. With all that explained, I am not really lecturing you, but I just want to help raise awareness and understanding in society with people and I with autism. People and I with autism would show signs of having autism even without knowing it. Here are examples of signs people and I with autism go through. These are from an article entitled 10 Signs You Might Be on the Autism Spectrum by Psych2Go. 1. You can't tell what others are feeling emotionally. Have you ever been accused of having no empathy? If you're autistic, you've probably heard this comment sometime in your life and found it strange. You really do care what others are feeling. The problem is, they don't tell you their emotional state. They just signal it with subtle facial expressions that seem like unreadable contortions to you. If you've ever been frustrated trying to solve this complicated visual puzzle just to know what someone is feeling, you might be on the autism spectrum. 2. You find it difficult to function in a group. Do you consider yourself a team player? If you're autistic, you may have had difficulties functioning in a group. How can you function when there's no clear procedure for what to do and say to everyone? How can you cooperate with others when they're always getting in your way? How can you keep track of multiple conversations at once? How can you follow the rules of a game or activity that are not written? Why is everyone acting like you are the obstacle? If these questions overwhelm you when trying to function in a group, you might be on the autism spectrum. 3. You have no real friends. Do you find it difficult to make friends? If you're autistic, it might seem impossibly mysterious. You might have been frustrated that the friend making procedure is not documented anywhere. You might have spent endless hours agonizing over the mystery of how others make friends so easily. You might have tried to see and imitate how others make friends, with poor results. In any case, if you don't have any real friends, despite your sincerest efforts, you might be on the autism spectrum. Excuse me. 4. You have your own unique way of speaking. Have you ever been nicknamed a professor or a robot? If you're artistic, others have probably noticed that you have your own unique way of speaking. You might speak in a formal way that sounds pedantic or old fashioned to others. Your vocabulary might be overly sophisticated for the situation. Your tone of voice might sound flat and mono- monoton- monotonous. You might have invented your own words or phrases when you found language too limiting to express yourself. These traits are more noticeable and surprising in children as they make them sound like adults or experts. If you remember anyone saying that you spoke beyond your years when you were a child, you might be on the spectrum disorder. 5. You can tell when it's your turn to speak. Have you ever interrupted someone without meaning to? If you're autistic, you might find it difficult to tell when it's your turn to speak. In theory, a conversation is a simple procedure. You wait for the other person to stop speaking. Then you speak until you're finished. But in practice, things are messier. Sometimes other people pause when they're not finished yet. Sometimes they ask rhetorical questions that they don't expect to be answered. Sometimes they get tired of you speaking and want you to finish your turn, but they don't say it. It's even worse in a group conversation when there are so many people trying to make turns. If you find that you speak over others a lot when having a conversation, then you might be on the autism spectrum. 6. You don't know what to talk about when having a conversation. Does casual chit chat feel exhausting and confusing? If you're autistic, conversations don't come naturally. You might be completely at a loss for what to say. When you do speak, others might find your remarks rude, naive, or embarrassing. They might feel that you are always talking about a topic that only you find interesting. They might complain that you discuss unfamiliar people, places, events, or topics without explaining what they are. Even worse, when you try to imitate those who are more successful at small talk, you discover that what worked for one conversation is inappropriate for a different conversation. If you, if you find that you have more sorry, conversational failures than success, you might be on the autism spectrum. 7. You are bothered by sounds which others don't notice. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by noises than others feel are normal? If you're autistic, sensory overload is a widespread problem. You might have an extreme aversion to loud and crowded places like shopping malls, stadiums, and concerts. But even in common settings, you might be uncomfortable with everyday noises like ceiling fans, fluorescent lights, faucets, and fridges. You might wonder how other people get along without being continually distracted and annoyed by these sounds. If you feel like the world is always too noisy, then you might be on the autism spectrum. 8. You are good at noticing and memorizing details. Have teachers ever praised your eye for detail. If you're autistic, you're more inclined to focus on the details rather than the overall idea. You might be good at noticing specific pieces of information that others don't perceive, like catalog numbers, dates, or car license plates. Your memory might also be very suitable for recalling large lists of facts. However, this can come at the expense of deeper understanding. If you have a good feeling and memory for details, but others say you miss the bigger picture, you might be on the autism spectrum. 9. You understand language literally. Do you wish, do you ever wish that people would just say what they mean and mean what they say? If you're autistic, much of human speech sounds like nonsense. Jokes, sarcasm, metaphors, and figures of speech are all diverse ways of saying deliberate nonsense. Implications, rhetorical questions, and politeness are other ways that people don't say what they mean. The problem is you're not a mind reader. Words have specific meanings. So when other people use words to mean other things, you might be left confused and annoyed. If you take everything literally and misunderstand what people are really trying to say, you might be on the autism spectrum. Finally, number 10, you hate changes of routine. Are you invested in the way you do things? If you're autistic, your routine has great emotional value. You might have a very rigid daily routine with every activity marked down to the minute. You might feel the need to plan everything you do in advance. As a child, your play time might have been highly structured and repetitive. Most importantly, how do you feel when other things disrupt your routine? If you feel greatly distressed when things don't go to plan, you might be on the autism spectrum. Females with autism. This is for all the girls and women with autism. It is important to learn and understand why females with autism get overlooked often nowadays. According to a study published in the American Journal of Human Genetics, it said that boys are more likely to have neurodevelopmental disorders such as autism because girls need more extreme genetic mutations to develop them. Additionally, in an article entitled Why Many Autistic Girls Are Overlooked by Beth Arkey of the Child Mind Institute, it discusses how more boys than girls are often diagnosed with autism, and Arkey explains this matter by mentioning the entire quick read section from her article. Far more boys than girls are diagnosed with autism, but that might not be because more boys have autism. Often, autism in girls just looks different from the stereotype of autistic behavior, so doctors might not diagnose it. Autistic girls are sometimes better at controlling their behavior in public. They might have learned early on to smile or make eye contact. They might also be more interested in making friends than boys with autism. All of this can make for a more subtle version of autism that a doctor might not recognize. Some girls with autism get diagnosed with ADHD instead, which can look similar on the surface. Autistic girls are sometimes better at controlling their behavior in public. Oh, yeah, sorry, folks. Yes, wrong paragraph. When girls with autism do not get diagnosed, they miss the support that can help them understand their challenges, build skills, and excel in school. They might get exhausted from trying so hard to fit in or be bullied because they miss social cues. That can lead to depression, anxiety, or low self esteem. Therapists might not see the autism is the underlying cause. Early diagnosis is important so girls can get the support they need as soon as possible. All right. People and me with autism often get overlooked. People and I with autism, just as people with different other disabilities, often get overlooked nowadays, and there are several signs about it. I mentioned before that where power, beauty, talent, and intellect and monies are valued, those who cannot readily supply them are overlooked, especially me. From Angel Sense, it mentioned the top 10 autism traits which get overlooked. They mention there is there is so much about autism that people don't understand. While it's easy to focus on how the condition makes daily life and social interaction challenging, people with autism also have many unique skills and abilities which get overlooked. Interestingly, there is research that suggests that low functioning people with autism may be gifted and more intelligent than people without autism in some ways. This is mainly because of how their brains process data, which makes them better at understanding numbers and patterns. Other studies have found that because people with autism tend to excel at visual processing, they are up to 40% faster at problem solving than other people. People with autism have a lot to offer the world. It's time to reevaluate and challenge what we know to be true about autism. This is the only way we'll confront the many misconceptions about the disorder while also helping people with with autism become functional members of society. In the spirit of World Autism Awareness Month, we've put together 10 of 10 of the top autism traits most autistic people have. It's our hope that by focusing on their strengths, people will learn to see autism as more than a disability. People and I with autism who are high functioning also get often overlooked, and there are certain reasons for that. Speaking of this, Very Well Health has an article entitled Five Reasons Symptoms of High Functioning Autism Can Be Missed, created by writer and author Lisa Jo Rudy. She said, autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is typically diagnosed in toddlerhood or early childhood, but it is possible for clinicians and parents to miss or overlook the symptoms of high functioning autism or HFA until late childhood, adolescence, or even adulthood. Even when someone is diagnosed later than usual, their symptoms will have been present since they were incredibly young. In fact, to qualify for an autism diagnosis, symptoms must have been present from early childhood. Here's why HFA symptoms can fly under the radar, sometimes for a long time. Moving on to autism and education. Most children and teens who are born or diagnosed with autism have been forced to be placed in special ed programs, especially other students with all other developmental and intellectual disabilities. Special ed is defined as a program for students with special need disabilities. Special needs education means the special educational arrangements which are in place for children with disabilities. People with special educational needs can take part in and benefit from education restricted due to enduring physical, sensory, and mental health or learning disabilities. Special ed programs are less bad than mental institutions. Inclusion. Most autistic students who are highly functional are needed and recommended to be mainstream in general ed classes. Inclusion has been important to high functional special ed students because inclusive education means different and diverse students learning side by side in the same classroom. In a truly inclusive setting, children feel safe and have some sense of belonging. Students and their parents take part in settling learning goals and take part in decisions that affect them. Inclusion programs could also make high functional special ed students have better lives in the future, especially as they grow older. Autistic students may face certain challenges in special needs inclusive classrooms, such as lack of experience in an inclusion setting, lack of experience dealing with severe and profound disabilities, including all students in all activities, educating students with less severe disabilities, dealing with deaf, shortage of teacher aides, and teaching compassion to students. Luckily, though, despite the disadvantages, there are advantages for special ed students to experience when being in inclusion. Some of the benefits of inclusion for children with or without disabilities are friendship skills, peer models, problem solving skills, positive self image, and respect for others. This can trickle down to their families as well, teaching parents and families to be more accepting of differences. The term inclusion is defined as the state of being included or being made a part of something. When a book covers many different ideas and subjects, it is an example of the inclusion of many ideas. When multiple people are all invited to be part of a group, this is an example of the inclusion of many different people. I'm back again, continuing on. Most adults with autism or kiddos. Most adults and I with autism are more likely to behave as kiddos nowadays, and we might be viewed as childlike. We would feel, for example, misunderstood or ignored as not being smart and adult like. A kidult is an adult who behaves like a child. Therefore, it is an adult with childish taste. It is also considered as a person in transition between childhood and adulthood, and the term of endearment for one's adult children. A kidult is an adult that prefers items of society which think for younger people. A kidult would love to play with toys or games. Also, a kidult could be an adult who wears clothing that a teenager or younger person would wear. It is also an individual caught between childhood and adulthood. Acting like a child while on the adult stage shows the youth of the heart. Kidults often run into the problem of finding a job at their level. They are overqualified for jobs in retail or fast food, but underqualified to work in most administrative positions. Therefore, just as I mentioned earlier before, they would work in part-time and low-wage salary job positions unless they find a trade to work in. A kidult is a grown-up that is also a kid, a fun-loving, nice, hyper, funny, slightly inappropriate person, extremely weird, and behaves more like a child. Still more, a kidult is a special adult who does not want to grow up, or at least act like an adult, and would instead prefer so-called children's stuff for entertainment, like cartoons, toys, comic books, and Disney movies. He or she also enjoys colorful kiddie snacks like breakfast, cereal, and SpaghettiOs, and dresses like a teenager or younger. They may or may not be great parents, as well as being able to take on adult responsibilities and not necessarily too immature, at least in public. And of course, kidults should not be confused with geeks or nerds either. And finally, a kidult is an adult who never grew up and someone who does not have the motivation to achieve independence outside of his or her parents' domain. This, however, does not necessarily mean a bad person. Probably keeps juvenile tendencies and at the age of 39 still playing video games and drink energy drinks and kick butt at both. Although we have passed adolescence, it is okay for me and most people with autism to struggle in our adulthood. For me and most people with autism and all other special needs disabilities, behaving like kids allows us to see life from a slight angle and prevents us from collapsing under the weights of responsibilities. Autism and independence. Independence can be challenging for autistic people, especially depending on their levels of personal state and conditions whatsoever. For most people with autism, being independent could be a challenging task to learn, grow, and cope with every day. Most people with autism would be supervised, dependent, helped, protected, and guarded by their support workers, paras, and all other supervisors. However, when I and people with autism have too much support and supervision and overprotection by other people all the time, then it prevents us from learning independence and other competencies. It is back and forth between supporting while also being in tune with what level of independence learning is possible, and then stepping back to allow that growth to take place. We all know that independence means the state is independent. Also, being independent means being able to take care of your own needs and to make and assume responsibility for your decisions while considering both the people around you and your environment. Traveling independently on public transportation. Speaking of being independent, there have been independent living programs for people with disabilities learning how to become independent in life. They provide opportunities for adults with disabilities, 18 years of age and older, to learn and develop in a group setting. Sessions focus on judgment, decision making, risk taking, recognizing strengths, problem solving, self esteem, and self advocacy. Additionally, weekly topics include money management, community safety, self care, friendships, and relationships. Still more, independent living programs include learning about budgeting, nutrition and kitchen safety, decision making, problem solving, community and internet safety, stress management, and all other topics to support participants making strides toward independence. Moving on, most autistic people could be introduced to travel training programs. In an article entitled A Guide to Travel Training by an organization called Milestones, traveling training programs are defined as a short-term, intensive, individualized course of instruction designed to promote the independent travel of older adults and people with disabilities. Additionally, a government website called Croydon, which is a government in the United Kingdom of England, defined the meaning of independent travel training. They said, independent travel is a crucial life skill that helps give a young person the freedom to fulfill their potential and live a full life, and gives young people and adults with special educational needs and slash or disabilities the skills and confidence they need to travel independently to schools, colleges, and community activities. Still more, the United Kingdom also have another definition of traveling training from an article entitled Travel Training. It said, travel training develops an important skill for life as it helps to give a young person the freedom to fulfill their potential. Traveling independently opens social, educational, and employment opportunities. Travel training programs help people with disabilities how to take public transportation. This task is often done and supervised by travel trainers. Autistic people could search for travel training program locations in neighborhoods wherever they live or ones that are nearer to them. Better yet, autistic people may also be trained in travel by their parents or any other members of their families who are experienced and know how to use public transportation for traveling. Either one of these two options, if autistic people feel sure, brave, comfortable, and confident enough of themselves or from their travel trainers, could begin to travel by public transportation independently and without any further continuing supervision. For example, most people and I with autism can travel independently by public transportation to go to school or any other destinations and back home. Unfortunately, while traveling independently in the real world, people and I with autism feel concerned and fearful at times because of all the common negative assumptions by ordinary people. We may feel free and positive going out independently, but at the same time may feel concerned and afraid that anything might happen to us, such as being misinterpreted and misunderstood and being accused of being hypocritical and problematic. Most ordinary people do not know or care that people and I with disabilities would feel skeptical because we know that we are not being deviant or dangerous. It has been our special needs behaviors controlling us. Anybody or most people in the world would find me and other autistic people as worst targets, praise, and baits of being any of the following dangers and negatives: underlooked, disliked and hated, offended, picked on, threatened, insulted, traumatized, ignored, scorned off, both misinterpreted and misunderstood, accused, misjudged, bullied and shirked, mocked, mistreated, unjustified, both discriminated and prejudiced, exploited, excluded, both marginalized and isolated, both ganged and mobbed, enslaved, smothered, peer pressured negatively, underestimated, both non sympathized and non empathized, and even deceived. People and I with autism are also deep victims of crimes and rioting. All these could happen to us physically, verbally, socially, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, behaviorally, or even sincerely. Many ordinary people would assume and believe I and people with autism are nothing but hypocritical, troublesome, or felonious for nothing. For example, most normal scared and intimidated by any signs or symptoms of people with disabilities for our special need behaviors. Most ordinary people would also assume people and I with autism as deviant or dangerous and troublesome, making us feel like nothing but discomforting, bothersome, hypocritical, and felonious human beings among other people, especially with their friends and loved ones. They would purposely want to cause any trouble with us. Most non-autistic human beings do not know, understand, or realize people and I with autism or innocent victims of common negative assumptions not planning anything troublesome, felonious, or hypocritical, especially putting people in any positions negatively. For example, when we try to do or say positive things to people, they would want to take them offensively and negatively. Additionally, when we do not, when we do abnormal behavioral moods and actions such as rocking, behavioral gestures, or talking to ourselves, we would scare and bother people. We would never mean to do it. Overall, I and most teenagers and grown-ups with autism spectrum disorder can live and be independent. In addition, practicing how to travel independently is a wonderful way for autistic people to cope, benefit, and experience the reality of everyday independence. Additionally, learning how to travel independently is a wonderful way for people and me with autism to learn, live, and experience becoming independent. Independent traveling helped us to have open opportunities for social life, education, and employment. Autistic people driving. Unlike traveling by using public transportation, driving is another story and a much advanced step of both independence and independent traveling. It is even more complex and tougher to learn and do than riding on a bicycle or scooter. That is driving any motor vehicle, especially a motorcycle, car, van, bus, or truck. According to the Autism Society website, it says that there is nothing wrong with autistic people driving if they do that under one condition. They must be fully well trained and educated and experienced in knowing and obeying all the safety norms, laws, rules, and policies to be strictly safe and careful, experienced drivers. Unfortunately, there are examples of severe road hazards people and I with autism should try to avoid getting into while driving and instead be deeper victims of the following safety issues which often happen on the roads, such as road rage, aggressive driving, drunk driving, drowsy driving, texting and driving, reckless driving, illegal parking, double parking, and other everyday common safety road hazards. Overall, people and I with autism can learn how to drive if we are either teenagers or adults having the permission and eligibility to begin learning and studying how to drive. So, therefore, to be well experienced drivers, autistic people and I need to go to driving school to learn and study how to get around in a vehicle and drive with a conscience, because they need to emphasize the importance of safety, respect for traffic laws, and emphasize the commitment that driving stands for. Additionally, the skills for me and autistic people who want to drive need to master while in high speed, high traffic conditions, such as merging into traffic, dealing with traffic lights and signs, showing road signs and exits, navigating toll booths, passing and being overtaken, keeping proper speed, being courteous to others, and keeping a safe following distance. If people and I with autism go to driving school, we must have several hours of learning and studying how to drive before taking the written exam. And before taking the real physical driving exam, to get their full valid driver's license only if or when they pass the driving test. Unfortunately, the full experience for autistic people and I driving could be an extremely fearful and scary, stressful, nerve-wracking, tense, and tough challenge to us in several ways and for all different and issues, and may struggle more to adapt to the rapid change. But on the other hand, though, for me and autistic people, driving can be easy for us, like running or walking, once we get comfortable enough behind the wheel. For this, practice hard and refreshing in our minds of all the rules and traffic laws and familiarizing ourselves well with the vehicle. especially of what we already learned and studied back in driving school. Okay. Anyway, moving on to autism and sexuality, also known as sexuality and disability. According from Wikipedia, sexuality and disability is defined this way. Sexuality and disability is a topic regarding the sexual behavior and practices of people with disabilities who have a range of sexual desires and differ in the ways they choose to express their sexuality. Commonly, people with disabilities lack comprehensive sex education that would assist in their sexual lives. This roots from the idea that people with disabilities or asexual, excuse me, or asexual in nature and are not sexually active. Although some people with disabilities are asexual, it is a misconception to label all as such. Many people with disabilities lack rights and privileges that would enable them to have intimacy and relationships. When it comes to sexuality and disability, there is a sexual disclosure that surrounds it. The intersection of sexuality and disability is often associated with victimization, abuse, and purity. For physical disabilities that change a person's sexual function, such as spinal cord injury, there are methods that assist where needed. An individual with disabilities may enjoy sex with the help of sex toys and physical aids, such as bed modifications, by finding suitable sex positions, or through the services provided by a qualified sex worker. Unfortunately, the Kenny Krieger Institution organization has a blog entitled Sexuality and Adults with Developmental Disabilities. Help talks about disability and sexuality, especially useful tips in the pursuit of sexuality education for me and adults with developmental disabilities. It began by saying this entirely. The topic of sexuality is one that's a challenge for many people to talk about. The challenge is compounded when individuals have specialized learning needs. What if we were able to engage with people with developmental disabilities, enlist them in sexuality education efforts, and then, and support them in being sexual self-advocates? What kind of impact would this have on their sexual health and safety? In our culture, overall messages about sexuality can sometimes be quite negative. This is particularly true for many individuals with developmental disabilities. It's even been said that it can sometimes be easier to be a self-advocate than a sexual advocate. The cultural message is often, you are not sexual, while paradoxically, another message is, you are oversexed, or variations on the theme of, you can't handle this subject because it will give you ideas, or you won't be able to control yourself if we talk about your emerging sexuality. Disability activist Anne Finger says it best. Sexuality is often the source of our deepest pain. It's easier for us to talk about and formulate strategies for changing disability discrimination in employment, education, and housing than to talk about our exclusion from sexuality and reproduction. Many parents and professionals believe that adults with developmental disabilities will always be children. You often hear, yes, they may be 18, but they have a cognitive age of 5. The damaging belief that results from this kind of thinking is that these individuals don't need any information about sexuality, which leaves people with developmental disabilities at risk for all kinds of negative consequences. Cognitive age has little to do with biological sexual age. As Isaac Thomas, a 20-year, a 21-year-old student at Valencia College in Florida, told Teen Vogue, just because a person has a disability does not mean they don't still have the same hormones and sexual desires as other individuals. It's even more important that they teach sex education to people with disabilities so they are not taken advantage of in any kind of sexual way. When the human body develops ahead of a person's cognitive abilities to handle such changes, this can be a true challenge. This potential for sexual abuse and feelings of loneliness are often byproducts of not addressing this topic in healthy ways. So, how can we change this scenario? Can we begin to see adults with developmental disabilities as sexual beings who deserve and want sexuality education? Even those with lower cognitive ages know that something is going on with their bodies. The realization can be normalized through education, or in the absence of guidance in education. It can promote fear, confusion, and inappropriate or harmful behavior. Hormonal changes occur at a biological level regardless of a person's cognitive abilities. The challenge is to craft the needed sex education to match the cognitive level of the adult. Autism and hypersexuality. Hypersexuality is compulsive sexual behavior. It is sometimes called hypersexuality, hypersexuality disorder, or sexual addiction. It is an excessive preoccupation with sexual fantasies, urges, or behaviors that are difficult to control because you are distressed or negatively affect your health, job, relationships, or other parts of your life. Now, this topic is good enough for me just to talk about instead of showing it. To start off, symptoms of hypersexuality disorder or sex addiction may include repetitive thoughts, urges, or behaviors that feel unmanageable. Strong emotions such as depression, anxiety, shame, guilt, and remorse are related to behavior, and unsuccessful attempts to change, control, or reduce fantasies or behaviors. It is common to know that sexual behavior is a normal, healthy part of life, and many people enjoy being active with multiple sexual partners or seeking out many kinds of sexual experiences. Unfortunately, hypersexuality becomes a problem when it causes significant distress for a person or puts them at risk of harming themselves or someone else. It is a big tough pity that the causes of hypersexual behavior for me and most people with autism are often underlooked and not well understood. However, sex addiction and hypersexuality may sometimes be caused by trauma experiences, distress, or by mental illnesses such as bipolar disorder. Adults who have been sexually abused as children may display increased sexual behavior. Medical News Today said that autism does not prevent a person from developing sexuality. A study from 2021 found that most autistic adolescents and young adults have an interest in sex and relationships. The study noted that, on average, autistic adolescents and young adults had less knowledge of sex and privacy. Medical News Today also said autistic people may experience certain challenges when it comes to sex and relationships. However, an autistic person can have a fulfilling sex life. Autism can affect how a person communicates, learns, behaves, and socially interacts with others. It does not require a cure. Being autistic can simply mean a person's brain works in a different way that is different from what society expects. Autism is known as a spectrum disorder as it can affect people in diverse ways. Some autistic people need higher levels of support than others. This can mean they need aid with daily tasks or skills such as language and behavior. Other autistic people may need low levels of support or no support at all. Autism often causes a person to have difficulty trusted source with social interactions. This may supply some challenges when it comes to forming relationships. The National Library of Medicine, a December 2017 article titled Sexuality in Autism, Hypersexual and Paraphilic Behavior in People with High-Functioning Autism Spectrum Disorder by Daniel Scotto mentioned people with autism have more hypersexual and paraphilic fantasies and behaviors than general popular studies suggest. But this inconsistency is driven by the observation for male participants with autism. Hypersexual and paraphilic behaviors are both in people and me with high-functioning autism spectrum disorder. Additionally, the same article said that females with ASD seem to have poorer levels of overall sexual functioning, feel less well in sexual relationships than men with ASD, and are also at greater risk of becoming a victim of sexual assault or abuse. Still more from Medical News Today concerning people and I with autism expressing sexuality. They said, sexual feelings are natural and not something a person should be ashamed of. It is also natural for a person not to have sexual feelings. People should never be made to feel shame for their sexuality. Expressing sexuality can be healthy for an autistic person. Research from 2020 found a link between sexual dissatisfaction and depressive symptoms and lower mental health. An autistic person may find that sexual behaviors help reduce anxiety or stress. Still more about autism and hypersexuality. I mentioned already before about female sex. One of the reasons of how high functioning autism often being overlooked. Research suggests that women and girls are underdiagnosed with autism. 4 times as many boys and men are diagnosed with autism than women and girls, but the reason continued to be vague. Additionally, a 2015 study suggests that females are genetically resistant to some of the symptoms of autism, which is a concept referred to as the female protective effect. The theory suggests that symptoms of autism manifest differently in both women and girls, and that females tend to prove better functioning social behavior compared to me and males with autism. While the reasons are still misunderstood, it seems clear that females on the autism spectrum, may make others less likely to receive diagnosis. Unfortunately, while sexuality is a part of life, it leads to one big downside: sexual abuse. Sexual abuse, or sex abuse, also referred to as molestation, is abusive sexual behavior by one person upon another. It is often perpetrated using force or by taking advantage of another. Molestation often refers to an instance of sexual assault against a small child, while sexual abuse is a term used for a persistent pattern of sexual assaults. The offender is referred to as a sexual abuser, or often pejoratively molester. The term also covers behavior by an adult or older adolescent towards a child to stimulate any of the involved sexually. The use of a child or other individuals younger than the age of consent for sexual stimulation is referred to as child sexual abuse or statutory rape. Live streaming sexual abuse involves trafficking and cord sexual acts and or rape in real time on webcam. Sex abuse is a should be excuse me. Sex abuse should be a deep matter for me and people with autism. And Wikipedia said this about me and people with developmental disabilities, according from Sobsey and Verhagen in 1989. People with developmental disabilities are often victims of sexual abuse. According to research, people with disabilities are at a greater risk for victimization of sexual assault or sexual abuse because of understanding, because of lack of understanding. Luckily, screening and training of caregivers, clinicians, and care staff improve prevention, sexual education, and sexual proper behavior, and assertiveness training can increase sexual abuse prevention. Clinicians and caregivers can advocate and educate others on disability and sexual abuse prevention to improve outcomes for preventing and treating sexual assault for those with intellectual disabilities. Wikipedia says this about what sexual education is about. Sex education, also known as sexual education, sexuality education, or sex ed, is the instruction of issues relating to human sexuality, including human sexual anatomy, sexual activity, sexual reproduction, safe sex and birth control, sexual health, reproductive health, emotional relations and responsibilities, age of consent, and reproductive rights. Sex education, which includes all these issues, is known as comprehensive sex education and is often opposed to abstinence only sex education, which only focuses on sexual abstinence. Sex education may be provided as part of school programs, public health campaigns, or by parents or caregivers. In some countries, it is known as relationships and sexual health education. Many governments see it as beneficial to supply public education on such matters prior to or at the beginning of puberty for reasons of public health in limiting the spread of sexually transmitted infections and avoiding teenage pregnancy or unwanted pregnancies later. Certain aspects of autism may take sexual activities more challenging. However, I and most autistic people can speak to either our parents or loved ones about any concerns or worries we may have. Helping me and people with autism understand sexual feelings and navigate a range of related issues can be important. Proper sexual education can make me and most autistic people less worried or unprepared when it comes to sex. Advice about sex and disability. Scope mentioned advice about sex and disability. Sex is an important part of life. Sex should be an equal, positive, and happy experience for you. You have the right to be seen and accepted as a person with sexual wants, wishes, and desires. Getting ready to have sex also means becoming more independent. You have the right to privacy in your sex life, even if you may need support from your parents or carers in other parts of your life. You have the right to be included in sex education and to learn information that is useful to you. Romance for me and people with autism is bigger and tougher step than friendship. In fact, Psych2Go said this about intimacy. If making new friends is tough, finding a partner is even tougher. There is a similar misconception to the earlier one that can lead to even more ignorance of autistic people's wants and needs. The misconception that autistic people are not interested in intimate relationships is another form of self-fulfilling prophecy. Unfortunately, some parents of autistic children who face daily challenges can be anxious about the future and be in denial that they will become adults with even more challenges. They can deliberately ignore any possibility of intimate relationships as a way of insisting that they will be children eternally. By refusing to give them any awareness or guidance, these parents set them up for failure and sabotage any possibility of adult relationships, which gives off the wrong impression. Autistic people want intimate relationships like everyone else, but they are exhausted and confused by the complex expectations and interactions involved. The uncertainties can be overwhelming and can also lead to withdrawal and self isolation. From an article, Learning to Love and Be Loved with Autism, by the National Public Radio, or the NPR organization, it said that emotions can be hard to gauge in the beginning of any romantic relationship, but for people with autism who often struggle to interpret social cues, romance can be particularly challenging to navigate. And for some, the prospect of loving and being loved seems out of reach. Unlike and bigger than standard friendship levels, most people with autism may feel love, can fall in love, and can feel emotions just as neurotypicals can. As a matter of fact, an article by an Australian book author named Tony Atwood mentions that many autistic people do fall in love, but when doing that with that distant, intelligent, kind, and distinctive person whose behaviors and emotions are confusing, do not know that that person also has autism. Romance includes dating to intimate relationships, intimate relationships to engagements, and engagements to marriage. People and I with autism want or need confidence and love, especially in going into any romantic relationship from engagements to marriages. Unfortunately, we do not know how to understand it in a romantic relationship. We can feel blind to everyday subtle social cues from our lovers. Because of this, it can cause conflict and hurt emotional states. For dating, especially before going into an intimate relationship, engagement, and marriage, the Open Doors Therapy article, which I mentioned earlier, says that romantic relationships can be difficult to maneuver when you are dating on the autism spectrum. Romantic relationships are complex and confusing for neurotypical people, but for autistic people, romantic relationships are even more complex and confusing. Many people with autism crave intimacy and love. Additionally, the same Open Door Therapy article mentions how autistic females who go on a date said, what may make a relationship incredibly challenging and stressful for a woman with autism is indirect communication and sarcasm. Likewise, their desire to communicate directly may make their partners uncomfortable. Often, autistic teens and adults say what comes to their mind. On the other hand, autistic males, such as myself, have a different manner when going out on a date. Angel Sen says, autistic partners may need pressure, not aggressive, but firm and consistent. While this is not typical what you think of with tender, romantic love, it may cause a person with ASD discomfort if someone were to kiss them or hold their hand gently. Keep in mind that all romantic and intimate relationships, engagements, and marriages could be either open or closed. What does that mean? Well, there are differences between closed relationships and open relationships. From Urban Dictionary, a closed relationship is defined this way: a relationship where two people agree that they want to be together and are together already, but not officially with labels, and promise that they will not see other people. This is commonly promised during unofficial relationships, more towards a promise to stay together in their relationship till the end. On the other hand, open relationships have a different meaning. According from WebMD, they said an open relationship means having more than one romantic or sexual partner at a time. It is an arrangement that both parties agree is non-exclusive or non-monogamous. As one or both partners engage in romantic or sexual activities outside the relationship, the arrangement's agreement aspect is key. If the two parties do not agree to an open relationship or marriage, and one or both still engage in multiple partnerships, it is known as a non consensual, non monogamous relationship, also known as NCNM. In addition, Janelle Ball, the owner and therapist for Healing Solutions Professional Counseling Services in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, drafted an article entitled Open and Closed Relationships Styles. It discusses about differences between open and closed romantic relationships. She defines both this way: a concept that can be helpful is to understand the difference between an open versus closed relationship style. In a closed relationship, partners tend to spend too much time together, not seeing friends, not continuing to do activities or hobbies like they used to. Partners look to each other to fulfill them and make them happy. This kind of relationship will ultimately suffocate from smothering each other and eventually fail. A healthy relationship style is an open relationship, not open as in polyamorous. This kind of dynamic allows each person to be their own person who has friends they see, activities they attend, hobbies they enjoy. This kind of relationship will allow each person to be happy within themselves, separate from their significant other. This will bring happiness and positivity into the relationship from which the relationship will feed. The result will be stronger, happier, will be a stronger, happier, and healthier couple. Now I believe that to be successful in having an open relationship, trust needs to be built and effective communication is key. Trusting someone is something that develops over time. I do not think it is healthy to completely trust someone right away that you just met or just began dating. Overall, if people date someone with autism, it is vital to be open to learning about the unique person they are dating. People should understand their likes, communication style, frustrations, and annoyances. People should be patient with the learning process and be patient with their autistic partners and their ways of doing things. Honestly, when dating partners, I and people with autism would face future common downsides of romantic relationship statuses, such as romantic relationship breakups, romantic relationship hiatus, meaning taking a break from being in a romantic relationship together, ex engagements, divorces, and separations. Luckily, therapy and counseling can help make any troubled and broken romances fixed and kept, especially for helping couples make the tough decisions of continuing or stopping romantic relationships. I and autistic people being in intimate relationships, engagements, and marriages can be successful in being in romantic relationships. A research article by the Amaze organization in Australia named information sheet Romantic Relationships and Autism said that relationships and dating are exciting and at times overwhelming time for everyone, including autistic people. This information sheet is for older autistic teens and autistic adults. In addition, the same article also said that autistic people often have a desire for intimacy and companionship. However, difficulties in interacting socially are a few, excuse me, are a key feature of autism which makes finding a partner and making a relationship work more difficult. But many autistic people do have successful relationships. Autism and friendships. I and people with autism often have little to no social status, move involuntarily, and are separated from others, are excluded from commonplace socializing, are denied personal agency over our lives, and are exposed to abuse and neglect. Also, I and people with autism are often segregated, denied personal agency over our lives, and exposed to social isolation. Speaking of this matter, Andrew Oliver, the founder and director of Do for One in New York City, said, "People and I with disabilities have developed unwarranted fears by not having enough contact with marginalized people. Even if unlimited funds are distributed and all the formal services through paid staff are in place, many still have no way of connecting to their community to make friends." And this might seem insignificant, but the problem it creates are big and complicated. Additionally, Andrew Oliver mentioned the feeling and reality of me and disabled people being protected by society and having very few to no friends at all. He said that, as crucial as families are, it takes more than just relying on a faithful few. The help of friends and the surrounding community is so vital. But if I and people with disabilities are all tightly in a controlled setting where we are being protected from society and society is being protected by us, then we cannot meet anyone and grow as people in the ways that many who experience ordinary privileges have. Looking back on one of the earlier articles entitled Loneliness and Autism, Working Professionals by Dr. Tasha Oswald, she talks more about the troubles of autistic people making friends when it when when being in the workplace. She says it like this: it can be hard for neurodiverse professionals to make friends and create relationships with colleagues. Adults with high functioning autism may struggle with social skills such as making eye contact, smiling, making small talk, and understanding social cues. These skills are important to neurotypical people because they build rapport. Because these skills may not come naturally to autistic people, they may feel socially incompetent. Clients and I with autism may worry that they will do or say something at work that will be misinterpreted and lead to serious outcomes. These outcomes could include things such as a deficient performance review, demotion, or being fired. These fears can make social situations at work highly stressful for autistic working professionals. Clients and I work with autism have had trouble at work due to social misunderstandings. This can be traumatic and lead to elevated levels of work-related anxiety. Clients at some point in their careers have needed to take medical leave due to depression, anxiety, or PTSD stemming from problems in the workplace. Moreover, about autism and friendship under this name of developmental issues on the same Wikipedia website defines the reality of autistic people dealing with friendship and entirely defines and speaks for itself this way. Certain symptoms of autism spectrum disorders can interfere with the formation of interpersonal relationships, such as a preference for routine actions, resistance to change, obsession with interest or rituals, and a lack of social skills. Children with autism are more likely to be close friends with one person rather than having groups of friends. Additionally, they are more likely to be close friends of other children with some sort of disability. A sense of parental attachment aids in the quality of friendships in children with autism spectrum disorders. A sense of attachment with one's parents compensates for a lack of social skills that would usually inhibit friendships. Continuing autism and friendship under developmental issues. A study done by Frankel et al. Showed that parental intervention and instruction play a key role in such children developing friendships. Along with parental intervention, school professionals play a vital role in teaching social skills and peer interaction. Paraprofessionals, specifically one-on-one aides and classroom aides, have often placed children with autism spectrum disorder to help friendships and guide the child in making and supporting substantial friendships. Final continuation on autism and friendship under developmental issues. Although lessons and training may help peers of children with autism, bullying is still a major concern in social situations. According to Anahad O'Connor of the New York Times, bullying is most likely to occur against children with autism spectrum disorders who have the most potential to live independently. Such children are more at risk because they have as of the rituals and lack social skills as children with full autism, but they are more likely to be mainstream in school since they are on the higher functioning end of this spectrum. Children with autism have more difficulty attending to social cues and so may not always recognize when they are being bullied. Similarly to all this, Psych2Go said this about people and me with autism having tough times of making friends. Making new friends can be tough, right? For those who find it tough, there can be a temptation to just give up. This kind of social isolation can give off a misleading impression that is out of tune with their real desires. The misconceptions that autistic people do not want friends has led to a self-fulfilling prophecy where others do not reach out to autistic people because they assume it will be unwanted. Many autistic people wish for social relationships, but they find it challenging to support stable, high-quality friendships. Even worse, most autistic adults have reported that their childhood interactions include traumatic events, exclusion, and bullying, which can lead to self-isolation out of fear. Autistic people feel loneliness like everyone else, but creating meaningful connections requires supportive friends with a true understanding of autistic differences and needs. I and people with autism often have extraordinarily little to no friendship and relationships. And even with seeing and meeting the same people often, they are not considered friends, but just acquaintances. Besides, both friendship and acquaintances technically have two different meanings. The word friendship is defined as relationship of mutual affection between people. It is a stronger form of interpersonal bonds than an association and has been studied in academic fields such as communication, sociology, social psychology, anthropology, and philosophy. A friend is a person with whom one is on intimate terms and for whom one feels warm affection. A friend who can be trusted. On the other hand, the word acquaintance is defined as knowing someone a little about, but not being friends or anything. It is less intimate than a friend, such as a person in your class whose name you know, and that's it. And the one having extremely limited to no social connections between each other. An acquaintance is the opposite of a stranger. Overall, friendship is more intimate than acquaintanceship alone. Speaking of the differences between friendship and acquaintance, learning levels of friendship could help me and people with autism how to make acquaintanceships to friendships. A research article entitled How to Make Friends You Have Always Wanted and Not Lose the Ones You Already Have, written by Arthur Pete Cafargio, mentioned the 4 stages of friendship: acquaintance, peer friend, close friend, and best friend. All these 4 stages of friendship are defined as the following, just as Cafargio mentioned in his research article. 1. Acquaintance. All friendships initially start as an acquaintance. This is someone with whom you share and know public information, facts about. You may interact with them, but do not consider them to be your friend. It takes just a few times seeing someone to consider them an acquaintance, but that person may or may not move past this stage in your association with them. 2. Peer friend. This is someone with whom you discover common interests, activities, and concerns. You may even learn a little about each other's goals, wishes, or opinions. It takes time to develop the status of a peer because it implies that you have met the person on occasion and have a type of involvement with them. As you discover who does and does not share your values and goals, it is natural for fewer people to progress past this stage. 3. Close friend. A close friend is someone you would consider part of your inner circle and with whom you share similar life goals and values. These are the people who know the most about your life and have been through a few difficulties with you. Close friends are those you see and talk to the most often. And finally, 4. Best friend. A best friend is someone with whom you have built up a strong level of trust and can share everything. The development of a best friend relationship takes time and experience together. It cannot happen overnight. It implies a commitment to support one another and requires honesty, loyalty, and discretion from both parties. Now, about how trying to make new friends, people and I with autism could be tougher at making new friends for long-lasting friendships and relationships. Luckily, Psych2Go explained the 10 ways to make new friends, which would help us do better in how to make new friends. Here are the 10 ways to make new friends by Psych2Go. 1. Introduce yourself. That sounds like an easy decision, but instead of waiting for others to approach you, it is good to take the initiative and make yourself known. That might be scary for people who are afraid of rejection, but like all beginnings, there is always an element of risks at play. It might take a few tries before you grow more comfortable approaching others. However, forming friendships is all about stepping out of your comfort zone. Before I go up and introduce myself to others, I like to give myself a mental pep talk. It boosts my confidence and lowers the walls. 2. Find commonalities and mutual interests. So, you just introduce yourself. Now what? The next step is finding common interests to talk about. Studies have shown that people tend to trust others more if they have the same music taste. When we want to form connections with others, we are more inclined to find similarities instead of differences. This shortens gaps and distances, which only creates more opportunities to understand one another. When I am trying to network, I like to talk about common goals I can achieve with others. This shows that we have a mutual interest and a willingness to tackle projects together. 3. Start relevant and engaging conversations. Do not bore the other person with small talk. creatively, and thinking freely lead to interesting topics for discussion. Do not be afraid to be different and engage others with meaningful conversations that are relevant to both of you. This will make you more attractive to the other person, and they will develop an interest in getting to know you better. I am not afraid to be a little silly with my conversations when I try to make new friends because it allows me to see if our humor is compatible. Making others laugh is a strong way to bond and break the ice. 4. Be available to hang out. It is important to have a schedule to hang out if you want to make memories with others. This can be especially difficult as you get older with more demands piled up on your plate, balancing school, work, and keeping a social life. But making a window to hang out, even if it is a small one, can go a long way. It is not so much about the quantity of time spent anyway, but the quality. I always try to reserve time to be with friends at least once a week in between my busy schedule. This also works in my favor because it helps me step away from my workaholic tendencies and reminds me to relax and unwind occasionally. 5. Be persistent. After you spend time together, do not be afraid to follow up with a text or email telling them that you had an excitement time and asking to spend time with them again. Not only does this show that you are going forward, but it also shows that you are willing to go the extra mile to build a friendship with that person. Persistence is an important trait to have when you are networking too. I like to keep in constant communication with people who I want to network with because it shows that I have an interest in wanting to work with them. 6. Ask questions. This helps the person know that you have an interest in who they are. People naturally like to know that they are wanted. I like to ask others about their passions, hobbies, dreams, and their favorite memories. This allows me to discover a whole new layer in them that forms a closer bond between us. It is also a form of reciprocation in which they show me that they feel open and comfortable enough to let me in. Trust is developed this way. 7. Go with the flow. It is important to be flexible and adapt to changes. As people get older, they tend to move around a lot, whether it be for school, a job, or a new home after getting married. As a result, long-distance friendships will be a thing. It is good to keep an open mind and support your friend's new lifestyle. Being in my 20s right now, I have many friends and family members who are moving away from home to embark on their new careers or graduate school. We stay connected through text, phone calls, and making occasional visits to one another. Just because things are different does not mean the bond is not still there. 8. Be reliable. Show that you are responsible and that you have an intense sense of morality. People like to know that you can be depended on, whether it means being able to follow through on plans or lending a listening ear. This also strongly applies when you are networking. By showing that you have a decent work ethic and are reliable with duties and tasks, more people will be drawn to you, and it helps you stand out from the crowd. And finally, 10. Be yourself. Cliche, yes, I know. But it is important to show people the real you if you want to have authentic interactions with others. There is no point in putting on facades and being someone else. And it will only stir up wild confusion when people finally do end up seeing the real you. In more serious cases, this will cause others to feel betrayed. By being yourself, you are allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Vulnerability and true friendships go hand in hand. More on autism and friendship. Most people and I with autism use and rely on social media to help find good friends in our lives. There are positive reasons why I and people with autism use social media to make new friendships and relationships, such as giving us opportunities to help find friends and be social in ways easiest for us, connect with others with the same interests, to connect with people from all levels of society through social media, and it has opened multiple doors for employment partnerships, used our words, our voice, as well as so many others. For messaging, texting, and emailing with other people, especially when not living close to each other, and when being lonely, isolated, marginalized, not talking with other people, whether in person, socially, or virtually. Unfortunately, meanwhile, social media meets new friends. Social media does have its negatives and downsides. This could concern this concern could be deeper for me and people with autism. In Autism Speaks, a June 2021 article entitled Social Media Offers Benefits for the Autistic Community by autistic author, speaker, blogger, and advocate Lydia Wayman. She explains the safety for autistic people on social media. Wayman entirely mentions the safety of autistic people being on social media. Being a responsible social media user means learning to recognize certain risks that come with the territory of being online. It is an innovative idea for everyone who uses social media to take the time to learn about these issues. Privacy settings, protecting personal information, doxing, meaning others finding personal information such as your address and publicity sharing it, showing frauds and catfishing, understanding inappropriate or illegal online behavior, spending too much time online, and online bullying. Research shows that autistic people experience more bullying than their neurotypical peers, including cyberbullying. Even among the autistic community, differences of opinion can lead to reactions ranging from civil disagreement to clear harassment. So, it is important to be able to recognize when someone crosses that line so you can set boundaries like blocking users who are being inappropriate. Social media platforms also come with their version of the hidden curriculum, the unspoken but widely understood set of rulers that govern interactions online. These things are not dangerous, but they are seen as socially inappropriate and can create awkward situations and sometimes spark conflict. Sending too many messages too often, typing in all caps, finding jokes and sarcasm in text, ignoring trolls in the contents, controversial topics, boundaries of different one-on-one relationships, and sharing personal stories, details, or photos to publicly, oversharing. Social media is far from a perfect solution to the social barriers we experience. It comes with its pitfalls and frustrations. But while most people could rattle off a list of negatives, it feels like a little known secret that social media is the central hub of a thriving autistic community in ways uniquely suited to people who want to connect, but do so in an atypical way. While social media is not for everyone, it is a valid and meaningful form of socializing that could be discussed, encouraged, and supported. I and people with autism face deeper matters and issues in the life of having friends nowadays. For example, people with autism may or may not know when they are being peer pressured negatively or positively by other people we try to befriend with. Speaking of that, we know that peer pressure is a feeling that one must do the same things as other people of one's age and social group to be liked or respected by them. There are many variations of peer pressure, but the most common are negative and positive peer pressure. Negative peer pressure is when someone who is afraid or part of a group you belong to make you feel that you must do something to be accepted. It is the negative peer pressure that we usually think of when the phrase peer pressure is used. It also usually involves influence that sways people toward risky activity such as criminal behavior, underage drinking, underage drinking, drug use, and an overall unhealthy lifestyle. This is an example of unhealthy relationships. This matter goes for people with autism, which may be deeper than those without autism. Meanwhile, on the other hand, positive peer pressure is when someone's peers influence them to do something positive or grow to build. This has the opposite effect and it can prove to be beneficial. For example, peers who are committed to doing well in school or at sports can influence others to be more goal oriented. Similarly, peers who are kind, loyal, or supportive influence others to be the same. Positive peer pressure could be excellent and helpful, to people during relationships. This would also be a bigger help to me and people with autism in making healthy relationships. There are other types of friendships people and I with autism do not want to be into, including those which are either fake, abusive, or toxic. Bad friendships cause mental and emotional health issues. The same goes for me and people with autism, but seriously deeper than deep. True and healthy friendships are rare and precious gifts, so we should never take them for granted. This reminds me of a saying from yours truly, Devon Hillary. Money cannot buy love. It cannot buy your friendship at all. They are priceless and they always will be. We should appreciate the people in our lives and let each other know how much we love one another and care for one another in our own special ways. Additionally, great friendships are always reciprocal. It is a constant sharing and exchanging of qualities and traits that our friends have. In this process, we all grow into the best versions of ourselves. Positive friends often come into our lives, but we often lose them because we take them for granted, which we should not want to do. Friendships are important for people, and me with autism individuals, especially all other people with all other special needs. Friendships are especially important because they also provide opportunities to improve social skills, practice ways to interact, and boost self-confidence. Developing and maintaining friendships can be difficult for me and people with special needs, especially with autism. Moving ahead to treatments with autism. Meanwhile, there is no cure for autism. There are several treatments for me and people with autism, such as behavioral management therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, early intervention, educational and school-based therapies, joint attention therapy, medical treatment, nutritional therapy, occupational therapy, parent mediated therapy, physical therapy, social skills training, and speech language therapy. Moving on to autism, safety, and dangers. As I mentioned before, anybody or most people in the world would find me and other autistic people as the worst target, prey, and bait of being any of the following dangers and negatives: underlooked, disliked and hated, offended, picked on, threatened, insulted, traumatized, ignored, scorned off, both misinterpreted and misunderstood, accused, misjudged, bullied and shirked, mocked, mistreated, unjustified, misinformed, both discriminated and prejudiced, exploited, excluded, both rejected and refrained, neglected, both marginalized and isolated. Both ganged and mobbed, enslaved, smothered, peer pressured in any negative matter, underestimated, negatively assumed, misinterpreted, belittled, under misconception, misinterpreted, both non-sympathize and non-empathize, and even deceived, misled, scammed, and spammed. I and other autistic people also are deeper victims of any crimes and rioting. With all those negatives, it could happen to me and autistic people, either physically, verbally, socially, both mentally or emotionally, psychologically, behaviorally, or even sincerely. People in the world would assume and believe that I and other autistic people are nothing but hypocritical, troublesome, or felonious for nothing, especially among people. For example, people would keep running away in a shy, stray, and wild manner from me and other autistic people due to being scared and fearful of any signs of symptoms of our autistic behaviors. Additionally, most people would act extremely suspicious at any time and place of me and other people with autism for behaving abnormally. At the same time, they would assume we are being deviant or dangerous and troublesome, and they would make us feel treated as nothing but any discomforting, bothersome, hypocritical, and felonious troublemakers among and to other people, especially along with their loved ones. Worse, most people who are extremely suspicious of me and people with autism at any time and place, assuming we are being deviant and troublesome, would purposely want to call the police on us, making us feel like unexpected witnesses and suspects, and then being arrested and questioned by the police for any felon none of us ever committed on purpose. Safety and danger concerns and common negative assumptions have been going on with me and autistic people everywhere, especially out in public, such as in public parks and beaches, schools, job sites, and even as commuters riding on any public transportation. Most people do not know, realize, or care that people and I with autism are not troublesome, hypocritical, bothersome, or felonious. It is the autism disorder controlling us, and no matter what I and people with autism do and say to other people, we still often get misunderstood and misinterpreted, misjudged, and mistaken as non-innocent people. For example, when I try to do or say anything positive to people, they would want to take it offensively and negatively. Another example is if I either keep on rocking, doing abnormal behavioral gestures, or even talking to myself. I would scare and bother people, which I would never mean to do. The bottom line is that safety has been a grave worry for autistic people and our families. Despite the threats to our safety, we lack the resources, support, and information that we would need to navigate our way around these threats. I and all autistic people deserve to be safe while living independently in the broader community. As friends and family members of people with autism, we can play vital roles in helping autistic loved ones achieve goals that need to be done of being out of harm and danger. Moving back to the article, 6 things autistic, autistic spectrum people want you to know, which I already mentioned earlier from Psych to Go. It explains 2 things about me and people with autism often being misunderstood, misjudged, and misinterpreted, wrongly accused, assumed negatively, belittled, and both overlooked and underlooked. We are not a threat. Social conventions like eye contact, body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, and controversial norms do not come naturally to us. We we consciously memorize rules and scripts to appear normal, just like you would memorize formulas for an exam. Research shows that our behavior seems unnatural to others, which triggers negative snap judgments and avoidance. A study by Knox College revealed what habits the general population wrongly believes are creepy and suggest harmful intentions: standing too close, making too little or too much eye contact, laughing or smiling at strange times, and discussing overly personal topics. These are common social mistakes by those on the spectrum, but they have nothing to do with the actual markers of dangerous people who are usually charming and charismatic. We are 7 times more likely to meet law enforcement, and this often turns violent when they misinterpret our mannerisms and stress responses as suspicious or threatening. We are not a punchline. Have you ever heard the term autistic used as an insult or joke? Even with innocent intentions, this contributes to a stigma that makes it harder to be taken seriously and reach out for help. Seemingly unrelated stereotypes like the creep, the loner, the nerd, and the neckbeard can also be harmful. They do not intentionally refer to autistic people, but many of our traits overlap, so it is easy for us to fall into these prejudices. We are already trying so hard to make you comfortable, socialize properly, keep our special interests within limits, and keep regular hygiene. In fact, we are probably putting in more effort than you. These can be quite challenging for us, and dismissing us with a negative label does nothing to help. Autism and negative assumptions. From essential from Health Essentials, there is an April 2017 blog of examples people should not be fooled about me and people with autism. It begins with saying this: I see anxious parents every day. An autism diagnosis triggers tough questions and difficult emotions in parents who want nothing but the best for their kids. Unfortunately, as the number of cases has risen, so has the amount of misinformation about autism spectrum disorder, ASD. Misinformation makes anxiety even worse. Separating fact from fiction can make a world of difference. Autism, race, and discrimination. I now must mention autism and race. This is where safety and danger concerns me and autistic people more severely. With too many common negative assumptions, rejections, stigma, safety, and danger concerns, and all other negative experiences to me and people with autism, these matters are deeply worse for victims who are born and raised as Black people, Asians, and other certain continental ethnicities to any of those dangers. First off, Excuse me. Furthermore, from the website Autism and Race, it matters with autistic people such as me who are all either black, brown, indigenous, Asian, or mixed race people of color. Additionally, they have been dealing with people who have autism through the intersections of disability justice, neurodiversity, and racial justice. And by fighting and building sustaining justice, healing, and liberation, no matter how deeply offensive or hurtful to most people in the world, the fact of this concern is that the Autism and Race website articulates their matters about autistic people this way. Oh, man. For those of us who are autistic and racialized, we often struggle to find representation in mass media, academic work about autism or race, and the activist and advocacy movements that focus on autism, neurodiversity, disability rights, or racial justice. Most autism and autistic organizations, publications about autism, and broader neurodiversity campaigns are white. Yet, disabled black and brown students are most likely to be affected by the school to prison pipeline. Most U.S. prisoners are disabled and black or brown. Racialized people are a global majority, which means that autistic people of color far outnumber white autistic people in the world. And the joint impact of racial and disability severely increase the likelihood for hate crimes, police violence, all other forms of abuse, and repeated traumatization. Luckily, an organization in the United Kingdom, England, called Ambitious About Autism has a blog entitled Explaining Racism, gave us helpful norms about people and me with autism to better cultivate racial prejudice and discrimination. You see, many people nowadays are deeper victims of prejudice and discrimination, but this matter is much deeper to me and people with autism, and being severely deeper victims about this as well. The blog said, for many autistic people, autism is particularly important part of their identity, but alongside autism, they may have other important identities like race, heritage, and ethnicity. Although race, identity, and privilege affect people every day, it can seem like a difficult topic to talk about with a child or young person. Our advice can support conversations about racism with all children and young people. Too many people in the world are just ignorant, discriminating, prejudiced, scornful, hateful, and naive because they neither know they either don't know nor care about my life and other people's lives with autism and what we have been going through from our past to present lives of success. And although people have been treating me and other autistic people positively, we would continue to have too many negatives, complications, difficulties, and all other strives, issues, and concerns by other people and society in the world every day. Moving on. Let's see. Got it. Autism lives matter. I and autistic people are special because most of us can display a range of strengths and abilities that can be directly related to our diagnosis, such as learning to read at a very early age, known as hyperlexia, memorizing and learning information quickly, and thinking and learning visually. Another thing that makes most of us autistic people special is our special abilities being more common in autism than in other groups. With one study, one finding that a third of autistic adults showed superior skills in one or more areas by the parental report and on psychometric tests. Additionally, I and autistic people should have both freedom and independence and be treated humanely. No person, nor I, with autism in the world should have the right to be treated less than any younger or older human beings because I and they all have genuine feelings and sincerity. Our lives are important and they matter. So does mine. Furthermore, neither I nor they deserve to be treated in any negative or unjust way whatsoever by other people and society itself. Instead, though, just as I have, people with autism can overcome and achieve whatever they do or say in their lives. All people and I with autism should never be either overlooked or underlooked. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this video of me reciting most things of my speech is to everyone living with and without autism, just as I do. Better yet, this speech is for everybody who is autistic and non-autistic, especially those who are also my friends and acquaintances, strangers, employees and non-employees, volunteers and non-volunteers, school students, refugees, immigrants, tourists, transportation commuters, police officers, and celebrities. And please know that this entire video on autism is not only for everybody to hear, but a way to help change people's lives by learning and understanding the reality of me and people with autism and the reality of autism itself. This speech is also for everybody else in the world who does not know anything at all about me and people with autism. Both Autism Acceptance Day and Autism Acceptance Month are vital because they are celebrations for me and people with autism, platforms of enlightenment, and promote acceptance. I and people with autism will live our lives and be ourselves. Have fun and enjoyment and make decisions and choices whether everybody likes them or not. Additionally, autistic people and I will go on with our lives until either the day of our deaths or until the end of time by the return of God. I reach out in love to all whom I meet and encourage you to reach out and encourage those who are hurting and suffering from autism. I need to congratulate all the following types of people working and taking care of autistic people: families and friends, guardians, neighbors, travel trainers, teachers and paraprofessionals, advocates, supervisors, support workers, counselors, and therapists, life coaches, doctors and nurses, specialists, medical enthusiasts, caretakers and caregivers, babysitters and nannies, even attorneys for people with disabilities. It is never an easy task to take care of autistic people. People and I with autism should be considered innocent victims of fate, psychologically and behaviorally sick patients, and incapable of taking part in any communities. Our entire world as society should recognize me and all other autistic people as human beings and not be defined by the disorder we have. Thank you.